All right, a quick video, really quick, to run through the answers for the word problems and math problems from the first day of track out work that I posted. So you had 2 word problems and then 2 multiplication problems and a division problem. So I'm going to run through the word problems really fast. So on your first problem, you had the book The Bad Beginning has 195 pages. Last week, a book publisher printed a total of 325 copies of the book. How many pages did the publisher print to make the books? All right, so on this problem, you are going to use multiplication on it. Your 2 numbers you're using are 195 and 325. So looking at those numbers, I'm gonna just quickly estimate my solution. So I have about 60,000. So looking over at the side, since I know I'm multiplying and I'm going to have a large answer, again, hopefully around there with my estimation, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of 2 of my answer choices. And now I'm going to go ahead and actually work out my problem. I'm going to use standard on this, and I know some of you are people that use the area model. If you use the area model, I'll do a problem here in a couple of minutes with area model 2729. The biggest thing with the 3 by 1 digit, if you're going to use standard, is making sure that you put in your zeros, your placeholders as you go through. So 8, 13, 1, 2, 11, 13, and then that. So my final answer ends up being 63,375 for the first problem. So that's what you should have. I'm sorry, I know it made my 3 crooked there. A little bit goofy. Okay, so that was the first one. On the second problem, you had to evaluate the expression 5 1/8 plus 7 3/4 plus 9 1/2. Looking at this really quickly, I know a lot of you pull out the whole numbers to start with, set them to the side, and add them. Remember, though, at the end to go back and make sure that you're adding them in. I know a lot of times we really worry about the fractions. When we worry about the fractions, go through, add them up. Sometimes we pick just the fraction part as our answer. And when we do that, obviously we don't get the problem right. So on my whole numbers, I have 5 plus 7 is 12. And then 12 plus 9 is 21. And I'm going to go ahead and circle that. And remember to come back to it. On my fractions, I have a 1/8, I have a 3/4, I have a 1/2. So there are 2 different ways you guys could break this down. One is just to take the pieces and add them together separately. So doing something like 1/8 plus 3/4, adding them together, and then taking that answer or sum and adding it to 1/2. I'm going to do my problem where I'm going to change the denominators all to a common denominator. Since I have this 1/8 here, I'm going to go ahead and turn my other 2 fractions into 8s. So 3/4 is going to become 6/8. 1/2 is going to become 4/8. I'm going to add them together, and I'm going to get 11/8. Again, if you took your numbers and you just added them one at a time, so if you added these 2, took the sum, added that, it shouldn't really matter. You should still get the same answer in the long run. Okay, so I have 11/8 here. I'm going to go ahead and turn that into a mixed number. So 8 goes into 11 one time. I have 3 left over. The 8 comes over and is on the bottom. So I have 1 and 3/8. So now I have to take my 2 sums, my sum from my whole numbers and my sum from my mixed number, and add them together. So I'm going to go 21 plus 1 and 3/8. And my answer ends up being 22 and 3/8. Okay, if you look over on the side with the answer choices, I know I wrote this problem, but this is going to be common as we get back and we start working towards some of our testing and things, that your answer choices are always going to include the numbers in case you don't look at the whole numbers. So just remember the whole numbers, really important. I know we've talked about that in classes here. So there's my answer. And on to the last three. All right, so my last three, I had two 3-digit by 2-digit multiplication, and then I also had a double-digit divisor, which I know is like not amongst our favorite things. So I'm going to do the 3-digit by 2-digit problems. I'm going to do each problem using a different strategy. So I know I promised I would do an area model one. So I'll do this first one, area model. Remember, when you're doing area model, you're breaking your number apart. So the 950 is going to become a 950. Since there's nothing in the ones column, I'm going to put a 0 there. I know some of you that do area model leave this blank when there's a 0 there. I still like to put it just so I'm in the habit of making my grid the right way. So looking at this, I'm going to remember take the first numbers, multiply them together, and then add on the zeros. So 9 and 8 is 72, and then I have 1, 2, 3 zeros. 8 and 5 is 40, and I have 2 zeros. And then down here at the end, of course, I'm going to have a 0 in both boxes. 9 and 5 is 45 with 2 zeros. 5 and 5 is 25 with a 0. All right. Once I have my numbers, I'm going to pull them off to the side, add them up, and I'm going to really be sure that I line them up. One of the things that I like to do sometimes is just to add them up in pieces. So there's my first two numbers. And I'm going to add my next number. Okay, and then I'm going to put in my last number. And so my final answer for this ends up being 80,750. All right. Okay, moving on to my last multiplication problem. I had 590 times 79. I'm going to work this one out standard. So going through, again, I know I worked out a problem on the other page with standard. Biggest thing is making sure you have your placeholder when you go to your second row. 35, 41. So on this, you should end up with 46,610. Sound good? I think so. All right, last one. The division problem. On the division problem, I know double-digit divisors can be a little bit tricky, and there's something that isn't necessarily something that's our favorite. I know that the biggest thing with them is not getting started with them, but when we get into the middle and we have to kind of think about how many times we have to multiply something. So I'll show you a couple trouble spots here. So 66 goes into 83 one time. Bring down your 66, subtract, and you have 17. And then this is where a lot of times it gets a little tricky. So how I like to think about this is, I think about this as, rounding it. So think about this like a 70. Think about this as like 17 or 170. So how many 70s are in 170? So I'm going to guess 2. So I'm going to go over here to the side, work out 66 times 2. And when I do that, I have 132. I know that seems like it's far away, but I'm going to go ahead and take it and subtract it. And one of the things that you can do as you go through and keep working out the problem, as you go down the problem after you subtract, the difference that I have here is 46. As you're working through, if you subtract and you get a difference that's either equal to this number or greater than this number, your divisor, then you know that you need to go back. So for example, if this had been 66, or if this had been 68 or some other larger number, I would have gone back over here, remultiplied, and thought it out a little bit more. So again, thinking about this as 70, thinking about this as, you know, a 40 something, I'm going to say that this most likely goes in, I'm going to guess 6 times. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and work out 66 times 6. Okay, 36, 39. Okay, so I'm going to show you something here really quick with what I was just talking about with subtracting, and if you subtract and you don't quite get it to work out. So here's what I'm going to go with. I like this 6. I multiplied it. I got 396. I think it's pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to subtract it out. So when I subtract this out, I'm going to end up getting an answer of 66. Okay. Now looking at this, that's my difference. This is my divisor. Since they're the same number, this is actually not quite right. This should actually be a 7. All right, so I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to remultiply. Okay, so that's 42. Carry my 4, 42. All right, and now I get 462 when I remultiplied it. So I can go back. I can change this. Okay, and when I change it, I end up getting 0. Okay, so that's like the biggest, I think, kind of pitfall with doing the double digit divisors is sometimes we go through and it's not the first time we work through the numbers where we go through and we figure out how many times 66 goes into 83. But when we start getting down here into the middle of the problem, when we get some bigger numbers and we have to start guessing at how many times a number goes into another number, it can be really tricky. But just remember that when you subtract, the number you get, if it's bigger than this number, you have to go back and take a step back, rework it. If it's smaller than this number, you got it. So your final answer on the last problem is 127. I hope you got your problems right, and I'll have a few more for you here shortly.